The fence gives us a square meter so that we can have a standard volume, although the actual depth depends on how far the clams go down. This bay is particularly both rich in clams but also quite diverse in the clam species. So there are native steamers or little necks that are often near the surface, and then there's butter clams, which tend to be a little deeper, and there's also horse clams, and there's also two kinds of macomas, so the bent noses and the Baltics. And sometimes you'll also find invasive eastern softshell clams. Oh, here, I forgot about these guys. This is a cockle.
Ooh, that's pretty.
When people ask what the squirts on the beach are, it's almost always horse clams. So one of the reasons we want to encourage people to clam is that it's a good, healthy source of food. It's a great way for families to get outdoors together, and it's very sustainable.
If we're going to recommend that this be a good public harvesting site, we need baseline data and trend data to ensure that it is in fact sustainable and that we catch any unexpected changes right away.
And we just go for the one manila type of clam, not the soft shell or the big, butter clams. So they're just right at the surface almost.
Mud Bay is a very abundant area and relatively safe. The area we're on is just a short section of public beach, but there's more that you can access by boat, both further that way and further that way, but there are private parcels in between. The state has all of the beach mapped out on the Washington State Coastal Atlas, and also the Department of Health's website actually shows each individual beach's health status, either closed, open, closed for biotoxin, closed for pollution, or unmonitored. Just this tide cycle, the Department of Health closed a bunch of the beaches in the north side of the county to harvest for safety reasons because there was biotoxin bloom. And even though the organisms that cause the blooms are natural, it certainly is exacerbated by changes in climate. One of the public areas that people can harvest is Spencer Spit. And Spencer Spit's nice because they actually post the red tide status and the limits right at the trail down. You need to have a shellfish and seaweed license. It's an annual license. It also covers things like shrimp and prawns and red rock crabs. If you want to harvest Dungeness crabs, you have to pay an additional $8.75 for a Puget Sound crab endorsement. But given the abundance of seafood that you can harvest and the cost of commercially purchased seafood, it's pretty darn affordable. There is a size limit. You can't get the really tiny clams. We definitely have some in the bucket there that are undersized, but they're going back in the hole after we get a chance to figure out how old they are. The mantle builds new shell, and so you can age a clam by counting growth rings.
15, 16 years old, which is right at the upper end for this species. And you can see the last few years are really very, very, very thin growth lines. So it grew very rapidly for 6 to 10 years, and then the last 5 or 6 years, it's been growing very slowly. So we'll take a closer look at our data when we're done, but one of the questions that we're asking ourselves is, are there too many clams on this beach? Too few? Clams like these give us the answer. Each species has to be looked at individually in terms of its reproductive rate and how recently it has had a major replacement event. And since most people would probably choose to eat steamers and butters, those are the ones where we want to see evidence that there's a good, consistent, continuous replacement.
So that's a clam worm coming out of the hole there.
Oh!
Most public beaches are never checked to find out what the actual harvest is and how that relates to natural rates of production. We'd like to see people able to dig clams here forever as a community food resource, so we need good scientific monitoring, which the state doesn't have the resources to provide.
Oh, beautiful in their little